Good evening, good morning. Welcome to welcome to week 4 of PSHS 6240. I'm in a low bandwidth area, so I wanted to just have no camera here. So, just wanted to review week number 3. I think we had a pretty good discussion. Announcements, or we had a good Adobe Connect session. I want to thank everyone who was there. I think everyone who was there got something out of it. And I think the week 1 did a pretty good briefing on it. So good Adobe Connect session. Paper 1, I'm taping this on Monday. I didn't get many exemptions. As I mentioned earlier, if you are in a different time zone, I'll give you the couple of hours there extra to get it in for this paper as well as the rest of the papers. DC session. For those of you who are in the DC area, it might not be a bad idea to just drop in on a class that's offered in person. There's advantages for online learning. There's disadvantages, but you can just drop in on a class and see if you like the online format a little bit better. Obviously, you can't do it for this course, but maybe another course you might find more to your liking. And finally, current events. Amidst all the hoopla about Comey and the FBI firing, I think something that happened this past couple of days is very relevant to what you learned in Lesson 3, and that's the Trump visit to Saudi Arabia, President Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia. So in your lecture or in your videos, it was told to you that Saudi Arabia, we had turned a blind eye to Saudi Arabia for many years, to their Wahhabism, to their spreading Wahhabism, to their atrocious human rights record. And only in the past maybe 15 years have we kind of confronted them on that. But according to the speeches made yesterday and today, it looks like we're going back to letting Saudi Arabia be Saudi Arabia. Not interfering with their internal affairs, making sure they're a buyer of our weapons and a supplier of our oil. I just thought that was something interesting. Again, current events are relevant to what we're going by week. And it's something you might want to just stew on and ask, is a hands-off relationship with Saudi Arabia good? Or are we going to lead to another wave of extremism? And I'll just let you think about that for while you watch the news about the latest presidential visit. So week 3 review, road to 9/11, close versus short term. I should say far versus short term, I apologize. One of the themes I was trying to get at is, is that extremism that we saw that was outlined in the video and in the Zakaria article, is it the result of long periods of history, going back to the Crusades and the Ottoman Empire and the post-World War I time frame? Or is it the recent history? And Zakaria outlines this. And he says in 1967, that's where the story starts, with the Six-Day War, and with 1979, the Afghan invasion, and the Gulf War in 1991. So one of the questions to ask is, do we go back? How far back in history do we go? A lot of you mentioned how the worlds were cut off, or the borders were realigned after World War I, and that had a contributing effect to all the violence that we saw. True, but then a lot of borders were arbitrarily drawn around the world. In Africa, in Southeast Asia, in Korea. That's an arbitrary border that was drawn, and we don't see the same amount of terrorism. There was colonialism. The rest of the world outside of Europe was colonized at one point or another, but again, we don't see the same level of extremism. The Crusades happened, but that's more a vehicle for mobilization than it is an after effect. And plus, it also happened over 1,000 years ago. So, one of the questions to ask is, is the road to 9/11, do we look at the long term, back to the Ottoman Empire, the Treaty of Versailles, or do we look maybe a little bit closer? The Six-Day War, or even the Gulf War, or even the globalization that we saw in the 1990s that left the Middle East behind, that's outlined in the Zakaria article. I'll let you decide, but a quick hint, know that for the final. So just be cognizant of that. Terrorism finance, again, the big thing I wanted you to take away is the ISIS comparison. So, there was an article about ISIS, about Napolini. I think the key takeaway there is, terrorist organizations are fundraisers that occasionally kill people. And I think that's accurate. If you want to fund a terrorist organization, or the fortunes of a terrorist organization rise and fall based on their income streams. And as we look at ISIS, and as we're decreasing their owned areas in Iraq and Syria, they're going to lose funding. They're going to lose people to tax, and they're going to lose oil revenue. And that's just something to consider as we go forward. So that wraps up week 3. Again, just a hint, know the 9/11 close versus short term. Week 4 preview. Just 2 sections. The first is terrorism adaptation. The readings, the RAND article, and the ISIS PBS frontline. So here's what I want you to do. The RAND article is like 180 pages, something like that. Don't read the whole thing. What I want you to do is, there's 5 terrorist groups: Jemaah Islamiyah, Shinrikyo, the Earth Liberation Front, Hezbollah, and the Provisional IRA. Read about one of those. Focus on one of those terrorist groups. And ask yourself, as you're reading, what elements made it successful, or what elements made it into the dustbin of history. And again, Hezbollah has been around for 30 years. It is a successful terrorist organization. In fact, it is a political entity in Lebanon. Shinrikyo, no one really has heard about in the last 20 years. The Provisional IRA has kind of gone away. So, again, focus on one organization, and then watch the ISIS PBS Frontline article or video that I sent, and compare and contrast your group with ISIS. And again, it goes along with the themes of this course, is that there's similarities and patterns that we see in terrorist groups throughout history. And so, please focus on one group. And my lecture talks about the success of terrorist groups. It talks about, where are the schism points, what are the decision points that led to success and failure of the terrorist group. And then the second is WMD terrorism. And I chose this one. If you go back to our first course, it deals with probably the only terrorist threat that presents an existential threat to the United States. The use of multiple chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons. I think, just to give you a little bit of background, some of you might not be old enough to remember the run-up to the Iraq War in 2002, 2003. That war, for what it's worth, was fought because of WMD. That's what mobilized the public. And it was fought because not enough people in the intelligence community, in the media, in the public at large, understood issues of WMD terrorism. And that's why this course, or this section, is so relevant. So, the readings, the CNAS, Center for New American Security, Shinrikyo article, excellent article. So please read that. And then the movie is Dirty War. And I actually want to emphasize, it's the HBO Dirty War, not the Netflix Dirty War. You can find it on YouTube. So it's the HBO Dirty War about a radiological bomb in London. And I'm a little hesitant at giving out a movie in a graduate course as assignment, but I think that the movie kind of tells a story about radiological weapons. It tells a story about first responders. It tells a story about politics in WMD, which is a key cornerstone going forward. So please watch the movie. The lecture, again, I'll cover the WMD 101 and some of the issues related to WMD. And the discussion is, why did Aum Shinrikyo, and this is based on the CNAS article, why were they able to conduct a WMD attack and not Al-Qaeda? And that's something to consider as you're applying WMD threats in ISIS, in Syria, former Soviet Union. What are the hurdles for conducting an attack, and why was Aum Shinrikyo able to overcome those hurdles and not Al-Qaeda? So again, I look forward to your discussions, and if there's any questions or issues, please